In the heart of our modern world, where noise and chaos often seem to define our daily existence, the teachings of an ancient philosophy can feel like a distant echo from the past. Yet Stoicism, a school of thought that began over 2,000 years ago, remains profoundly relevant to the struggles we face today. It offers not only a path toward personal peace but also a framework for enduring the storms of life with strength and dignity. The Stoics understood something that we often forget in the constant whirlwind of our modern lives. They knew that chaos is inevitable. Life has always been unpredictable. Circumstances shift like sand beneath our feet, relationships change, plans fail, and the world throws at us challenges we never saw coming. But they also knew something even more important. We are not powerless in the face of this chaos. We hold within us the ability to determine how we experience the world, how we respond to its turbulence, and how we choose to live despite it. Imagine yourself waking up in the morning and already feeling overwhelmed. News headlines scream about crises, your inbox overflows with demands, and your personal life feels like it is fraying at the edges. This is our reality. We live in a time where constant information bombardment and social pressures threaten to tear apart our sense of calm. But what if we could step back from this whirlwind and find stillness even in the midst of it? This is where Stoicism comes in. It teaches us that while we cannot control the external world, we can master our inner world. We can train our minds to remain steady no matter what is happening around us. This is not about withdrawing from life or pretending problems do not exist. It is about facing them with clear eyes and a calm heart, rooted in wisdom and self-control. At its core, Stoicism reminds us that our suffering often does not come from events themselves but from our judgments about them. When we label something as a disaster or a catastrophe, our minds amplify the pain. But if we shift our perspective, if we approach difficulties as opportunities for growth or as challenges that will strengthen us, then we take away much of their power to harm us. The Stoics called this understanding the discipline of perception. It means seeing reality as it truly is, not as our fears or emotions paint it. In a chaotic world, this skill is invaluable. It helps us step back from emotional reactivity and instead respond with clarity and purpose. Think about the last time something went wrong in your life. Maybe you lost a job, faced betrayal, or experienced failure in something that mattered deeply to you. In that moment, chaos took over your mind. Thoughts raced. Emotions burned. You may have felt lost, angry, or broken. But now imagine approaching that same situation with the mindset of a Stoic. Instead of spiraling into despair, you acknowledge that while you cannot change what happened, you can control how you respond. You can take action where it is possible, and you can accept what is beyond your control without allowing it to destroy your peace. This is the heart of Stoic resilience, a quality desperately needed in our modern age. The Stoics were not detached dreamers who ignored reality. They were people who faced real struggles, political turmoil, exile, and even death. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, ruled an empire plagued by wars and plagues. Seneca faced exile and plots against his life. Epictetus lived as a slave before gaining his freedom. Yet all of them found a way to live with integrity, to remain steady in a world that constantly threatened to pull them apart. They teach us that chaos is not an enemy to be feared but a reality to be navigated with courage and wisdom. This is a message we desperately need as we face our own storms, whether personal or global. When we practice Stoicism, we begin to shift our focus from what is outside our control to what lies within. We cannot stop the storms of life, but we can strengthen the vessel of our mind. This shift brings with it an extraordinary sense of freedom. You may not be able to change the outcome of an event, but you can always choose your attitude toward it. This is where real power lies, not in controlling the world but in mastering yourself. In a time when so much feels uncertain and fragile, that kind of power can change everything. As we explore the lessons of Stoicism, we will see how its principles can transform the way we live, work, and love. It is more than a philosophy. It is a practical guide for surviving and thriving in a world that often feels overwhelming. In this journey, we will learn how to cultivate inner peace, how to find purpose even in pain, and how to remain resilient no matter what chaos surrounds us. This is the gift Stoicism offers, a map to navigate the storms of life with grace and strength. And as we walk this path together, you may find that what once felt unbearable becomes manageable, and what once seemed impossible becomes an opportunity for growth. So as you listen today, take a moment to reflect. Where in your life are you letting chaos control you? Where are you giving away your peace to forces you cannot change? And what might it look like to reclaim that power, to live as the Stoics did, with unshakable calm and an unwavering sense of purpose even in the face of the storm? This is only the beginning of our exploration. In the next part, we will dive deeper into the practical tools Stoicism gives us to transform our thoughts and actions in the midst of chaos. As we continue exploring how Stoicism can guide us through a chaotic world, let us look closer at the first principle the Stoics practiced with great intention, the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. This is the cornerstone of their philosophy and perhaps the most liberating lesson we can learn from them. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic teachers, spoke about this truth endlessly. He said that some things are up to us and some things are not. When we waste our energy trying to control the uncontrollable, we guarantee our own suffering. But when we shift our focus toward what lies within our power, we begin to taste true freedom. In a world where we are constantly bombarded by news, opinions, and unpredictable events, this teaching is like a lifeline. Think about your daily life. How often do you stress over things you cannot change? The traffic that makes you late, the opinion someone has about you, the economic shifts that affect your job, or even the actions of people close to you. These things weigh heavily on us, yet they remain beyond our grasp. The Stoics remind us that peace comes from letting go of the futile struggle to control what cannot be controlled. They urge us to turn inward, to focus on what we can govern, our choices, our attitudes, and our actions. That is where our true influence lies. Imagine this. You are stuck in traffic on your way to an important meeting. You feel the anxiety rising. Every red light feels like a personal attack. You might be tempted to slam the steering wheel or curse the drivers around you. But none of this changes the situation. The traffic will not clear because you are angry. Instead, a Stoic approach would encourage you to shift your perspective. Ask yourself, what is within my control here? Can I control the traffic? No. Can I control the clock? No. But I can control my response. I can choose to breathe deeply, to accept what is, to use this time to reflect, to listen to something meaningful, or to plan how to handle the meeting when I arrive. This is not passive acceptance. It is an active choice to respond with wisdom instead of frustration. This is why the discipline of control is so powerful. It frees us from the illusion that we can manage the world around us. It teaches us to find strength where we actually have it, in our own character. The Stoics believe that the person who masters their mind is far freer than the one who masters external circumstances. You might think freedom comes from having everything go your way, but in truth, freedom comes from no longer needing everything to go your way in order to remain at peace. Consider how this principle applies to relationships. We often try to control how others behave, think, or feel. We want them to act in ways that match our expectations. But this creates endless disappointment because people will always be who they are. The Stoic approach is to accept others as they are while taking responsibility for our own reactions. You cannot force someone to love you, to respect you, or to understand you. But you can choose how you respond to them. You can choose patience over anger, dignity over pettiness, and calm over reactivity. This is how Stoicism transforms not only our minds but our relationships. The same principle applies to our fears about the future. How many sleepless nights have you spent worrying about what might happen? Will I lose my job? Will I get sick? Will the world become more dangerous? These fears consume us, yet they are often beyond our control. The Stoics faced similar anxieties. They lived through wars, plagues, and political upheavals. But their answer was not to give in to fear. Instead, they practiced what they called premeditation of adversity, a kind of mental rehearsal for the challenges of life. They would imagine the worst possible outcomes, not to dwell in misery, but to prepare their minds. By facing their fears in thought, they took away their power. They learned to say, "If this happens, I will endure it, because my strength lies not in avoiding hardship but in meeting it with courage." This is a powerful exercise for us today. If you fear losing your job, instead of obsessing over that fear, imagine how you would respond if it happened. How would you adapt? What steps would you take? What inner resources could you rely on? By walking through the fear in your mind, you turn it from a shadow into something you can face. Suddenly it feels less overwhelming because you have already met it in your thoughts. Another practical tool the Stoics used to find peace in chaos is gratitude. In our modern world, we are often consumed by what we lack. We want more money, more success, more recognition. But this constant striving leaves us feeling empty. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to wake each day with appreciation for the simple gift of being alive, for the breath in his lungs, for the people around him, and for the opportunities to live with virtue. When we cultivate gratitude, we shift our focus from what is missing to what is present. We begin to see abundance even in difficult times. This simple practice can transform chaos into a reminder of what truly matters. As you listen now, reflect on where you are directing your energy. Are you trapped in battles you cannot win, trying to control people, events, or outcomes beyond your reach? Or are you focusing on the one thing that is always within your grasp, your own choices and your own character? This is the heart of Stoicism, the discipline of control. When you live by it, you find that even in the most chaotic world, you can remain unshaken. In the next part, we will dive into another essential Stoic teaching, the art of managing our emotions, and see how emotional mastery allows us to stay grounded even when life feels overwhelming. Now that we have explored the Stoic understanding of control, it is time to turn our attention to one of the most transformative aspects of their philosophy, the mastery of emotions. In a chaotic world, emotions can often feel like wild horses pulling us in every direction. Anger, fear, jealousy, and grief can rise so quickly that we lose our footing, reacting in ways that we later regret. The Stoics never claimed that we should suppress our emotions or pretend they do not exist. Instead, they taught us how to understand them, to work with them, and to respond to them with reason and wisdom. This is not emotional numbness but emotional intelligence at its highest form. Consider how often chaos in our lives is not caused by events themselves but by how we interpret and react to them. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who faced enormous challenges, reminded himself that if you are troubled by something outside of you, the pain is not from the thing itself but from your judgment about it, and this you have the power to change. In this way, the Stoics teach us that our emotions are not inevitable forces of nature but responses shaped by our interpretations. Change the way you think, and you change the way you feel. Take anger, for example. It is one of the most destructive emotions when left unchecked. A friend says something hurtful, and before you even pause to reflect, you lash out. Later, you regret it, but the damage is done. The Stoic approach invites us to insert a moment of space between the stimulus and our response. Instead of reacting immediately, they practice pausing, observing the feeling rise within them, and asking, "Is my response aligned with reason? Will this action reflect my best self or make things worse?" By doing this, they gained power over their impulses. Seneca wrote extensively about anger, calling it a temporary madness. He advised that when we feel its grip tightening, we should step away, give ourselves time to cool down, and return to the situation with clarity. This is practical advice for us today. Whether it is a heated argument with a loved one or frustration at a coworker, taking a moment to pause before responding can prevent small conflicts from escalating into chaos. Fear, another powerful emotion, can also paralyze us. We fear losing what we love, fear failure, fear uncertainty. But the Stoics approached fear as an opportunity for growth. Instead of running from it, they examined it. Epictetus encouraged his students to ask, "What exactly am I afraid of? Is it death? Poverty? Rejection?" And then to challenge those fears with reason. Much of our fear, when analyzed, loses its grip. When you bring fear into the light of rational thought, it shrinks. One practical Stoic exercise for dealing with fear is called negative visualization. At first, it may sound grim, but it is deeply liberating. They would imagine losing the things they value most, not to dwell in despair, but to prepare their hearts. If you imagine that loss and come to terms with its possibility, you realize that you can survive it, that your peace does not depend entirely on external possessions or relationships. This does not mean you care less about these things. In fact, it allows you to cherish them more fully in the present moment, knowing they are not permanent. Another key emotion the Stoics often addressed is grief. Life, as they knew well, is filled with loss. They experienced the deaths of loved ones, the fall of cities, and the crumbling of empires. Yet, they did not advise suppressing grief. They allowed themselves to feel it but not to be consumed by it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that sorrow is natural but that we must return to what is within our control, our own actions and character. When we shift from being overwhelmed by grief to asking how we can live honorably in spite of it, we regain our footing. Jealousy and envy, too, are emotions the Stoics urged us to confront with reason. It is easy to look at the lives of others, their wealth, their success, their beauty, and feel inadequate or resentful. But the Stoics saw this as a distortion of value. They taught that the only true good lies in virtue, not in material possessions or status. When you deeply internalize this truth, you realize there is nothing to envy. Another person's success does not diminish your ability to live virtuously and meaningfully. The Stoic practice of journaling is another powerful tool for emotional mastery. Each night, they would reflect on their day, examining moments where they lost control of their emotions and where they succeeded in managing them. Marcus Aurelius' meditations are a prime example of this practice. By writing out his struggles, his failures, and his aspirations, he created space for growth. Journaling allows us to confront our emotions honestly, to understand their roots, and to plan better responses for the future. When you practice these Stoic methods, you begin to see your emotions not as enemies but as signals. They tell you where your values lie, where your attachments are strongest, and where you need to grow. By observing them without judgment and responding with reason, you transform emotional chaos into an opportunity for self-knowledge and resilience. In a world where chaos often feels uncontrollable, emotional mastery is a superpower. It does not make the storms disappear, but it allows you to stand firmly in the middle of them, calm and unshaken. In the next part, we will explore how the Stoic pursuit of virtue provides a compass for navigating life's challenges and brings meaning even in times of turmoil. As we continue our journey into the heart of Stoicism, we arrive at one of its central pillars, the pursuit of virtue. For the Stoics, virtue was not merely a moral guideline or a suggestion for living a better life. It was the very essence of what it means to live well. In their view, a good life is not defined by wealth, fame, or even comfort. It is defined by the consistent pursuit of wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These four cardinal virtues were the compass by which they navigated the storms of existence, a compass we too can carry in our own chaotic world. Let us begin with wisdom, which the Stoics considered the highest of the virtues. Wisdom is not just knowledge or cleverness. It is the ability to discern what is truly good, what is indifferent, and what is harmful. In other words, it is seeing the world as it is, not as we wish it to be, and making choices in alignment with that reality. When chaos surrounds us, wisdom helps us cut through the noise. It teaches us to ask, what is within my control? What really matters here? By anchoring ourselves in wisdom, we avoid being swept away by every passing wave of emotion or misfortune. Justice, another key virtue, is the recognition that we are part of a larger human community and that our actions should contribute to the well-being of others. In times of chaos, when fear and self-preservation often dominate, justice calls us to remember our shared humanity. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that what benefits the hive benefits the bee. In practice, this means acting with fairness, compassion, and integrity, even when the world feels unfair and cruel. It means treating others not based on how they treat us, but on the principles of kindness and equity that define our character. Courage, the third virtue, is the strength to face life's hardships with dignity. This does not mean fearlessness. The Stoics knew that fear is a natural response to danger and uncertainty. But courage is choosing to act rightly in spite of fear. Epictetus, who lived his entire life as a slave, understood this deeply. He could not control his external circumstances, but he could control how he faced them. In our own lives, courage may mean speaking the truth when silence feels safer, leaving an unhealthy relationship when it feels easier to stay, or standing up for what we believe in when it costs us comfort or popularity. Courage allows us to live with integrity even when the stakes are high. The final virtue, temperance, is the practice of self-control and moderation. It is knowing when enough is enough and living in balance. In a world that constantly urges us to consume more, achieve more, and desire endlessly, temperance is radical. It asks us to pause and reflect. Do I really need this? Will this bring me lasting fulfillment? Temperance helps us avoid the extremes of indulgence and deprivation, teaching us instead to live with a sense of harmony and sufficiency. These four virtues are not abstract ideals but practical tools. They provide a framework for decision-making in a chaotic world. When faced with a difficult choice, we can ask ourselves, what would the wise path be? What is just? What is the courageous action? What would temperance advise? By using these virtues as our guide, we can make decisions that align with our deepest values rather than reacting impulsively to external pressures. Consider a modern example. Imagine you are at work, and you are asked to participate in something unethical, perhaps bending the truth to secure a deal or undermining a colleague for personal gain. The chaotic pull of the moment might tempt you to comply, fearing the consequences of refusal. But the Stoic virtues offer a way forward. Wisdom reminds you to see the situation clearly and recognize the long-term harm of compromising your integrity. Justice calls you to consider how your actions affect others. Courage pushes you to stand firm even if it costs you your position. Temperance prevents you from overreacting or becoming consumed by anger or fear. In following these virtues, you not only preserve your character but also bring order to the chaos around you. The pursuit of virtue transforms how we experience life. When external chaos rages, virtue gives us an inner stability that cannot be taken away. This is why the Stoics said that a virtuous life is the only truly good life. It is a source of freedom and peace that no external event, however tragic or overwhelming, can destroy. In the next part, we will explore another vital Stoic practice, acceptance of fate, or what they called amor fati, the love of one's fate. This practice teaches us how to embrace life as it comes, not with resignation but with active, joyful acceptance, even when it does not go according to our plans. If there is one Stoic idea that captures the very essence of their worldview, it is amor fati, the love of one's fate. This principle does not simply ask us to tolerate what happens to us. It challenges us to embrace it fully, even the painful and unexpected events we would rather avoid. To the Stoics, life was not about shaping the world to fit our desires. It was about aligning our desires with the world as it actually is. This is not passive resignation. It is active, joyful acceptance of the unfolding of events, a radical form of harmony with existence itself. Amor Fati asks us to say yes not only to the moments of joy but also to the trials, disappointments, and losses that life inevitably brings. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it." This means that every obstacle, every hardship, can become fuel for our growth if we allow it. Instead of resisting the chaos around us, we can transform it into an opportunity for wisdom and resilience. Think about how much energy we waste fighting reality. We wish things were different. We replay the past, imagining how we could have acted differently. We dread the future, fearing outcomes we cannot predict or control. In doing so, we create our own suffering on top of the challenges life already gives us. Amor Fati liberates us from this struggle. It tells us to meet reality with open arms, to see every event as part of a larger tapestry we may not fully understand but can still trust. This does not mean we stop striving to improve our lives or make better choices. The Stoics were not fatalists in the sense of being passive. They believed in using reason and virtue to act rightly in every situation. But they also recognized that once we have done what is within our power, the outcome is no longer ours to control. At that point, we can either resist reality and suffer, or accept it and find peace. Amor Fati is choosing peace. Consider the story of Epictetus. Born into slavery, subjected to harsh treatment, and even crippled by his master, Epictetus could have easily viewed his life as unfair and meaningless. But instead, he embraced his fate. He recognized that while he could not control his circumstances, he could control his response. This shift in perspective allowed him to rise above his suffering and become one of the greatest philosophers in history. His life is a testament to the power of loving one's fate, no matter how difficult it may be. In our own lives, Amor Fati invites us to look at our struggles differently. Instead of asking, "Why me?" we can ask, "What can I learn from this? How can this situation help me grow stronger, wiser, or more compassionate?" Imagine losing a job. At first, it may feel like a catastrophe, shaking your sense of security and identity. But through the lens of Amor Fati, this loss can become an opportunity, a chance to redirect your path, pursue something more meaningful, or build resilience you never knew you had. Even in the face of profound loss, Amor Fati offers a way forward. When we lose someone we love, the pain can feel unbearable. Stoicism does not ask us to deny our grief. It asks us to hold it with dignity, recognizing that death is part of a natural order. Everything that begins must end. By embracing this truth, we can honor the time we had with those we love instead of being consumed by resentment or despair. This practice also frees us from the anxiety of trying to control everything. When we truly love our fate, we stop obsessing over outcomes. We do our best in each moment and trust that whatever comes is part of the path we are meant to walk. This does not mean we will always like what happens. But over time, we can learn to see even the hardest events as meaningful parts of our journey. Applying Amor Fati in the modern world can be transformative. In a society obsessed with control and perfection, where we are constantly told we must achieve, fix, and optimize everything, Stoicism offers a radical alternative. It says, work hard, live virtuously, but do not tie your peace to the results. Accept what comes as part of your story, even if it was not the story you planned to write. This practice builds incredible resilience. When you stop seeing challenges as threats and start viewing them as opportunities for growth, you become unshakable. The chaos of the world loses its power over you. You learn to dance with life instead of fighting against it. In the next section, we will explore how Stoicism teaches us to find tranquility in a chaotic world through the practice of mindfulness and presence, staying anchored in the here and now instead of being lost in regrets of the past or fears of the future. In the middle of chaos, the Stoics teach us one of the most valuable skills we can cultivate, the ability to stay present. So much of our suffering is created not by what is happening in the moment but by our minds wandering into the past or the future. We replay old mistakes, imagining how we could have acted differently. We project ourselves into the future, worrying about events that may never come to pass. In doing so, we abandon the only place where life truly happens, the present moment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly to return to the now. He wrote, "Do not let your imagination be carried away by the whole of your life. Do not try to picture everything at once. Simply focus on the present." This was not an abstract idea for him. He faced war, betrayal, illness, and the weight of ruling a vast empire, yet he found calm by grounding himself in the moment at hand. He understood that while he could not control the future or rewrite the past, he could choose how to act right now. For the Stoics, presence is more than just a peaceful state of mind. It is a moral and practical discipline. When we are fully present, we can respond wisely to what is before us. We can make better decisions, treat others with kindness, and live according to our values. But when we are lost in our thoughts, consumed by regrets or fears, we often act impulsively or fail to act at all. One way to practice this is through what the Stoics called the discipline of assent. This means pausing before we accept our thoughts and impressions as true. When something happens, our first reaction is often emotional and automatic. We label the event as good or bad, as a blessing or a disaster. But the Stoics encourage us to step back and ask, is this judgment accurate? Is this reaction helping me live in line with virtue? By questioning our initial responses, we create space between the event and our interpretation of it. This space is where freedom lives. Epictetus taught his students to focus only on what is within their control, which is ultimately their thoughts and actions in the present moment. He compared life to being an actor in a play. You do not choose the script, the role, or the stage, but you can choose how to perform. This metaphor is liberating. It reminds us that our power lies not in changing the entire world but in playing our part well, right here and now. Modern mindfulness practices echo these ancient teachings. Meditation, deep breathing, and mindful observation of our thoughts can help us anchor ourselves in the present. But Stoic mindfulness goes beyond techniques. It is a way of living. It is walking through the world awake, attentive, and deliberate. It is noticing when we are carried away by distractions or consumed by anger and gently returning to the simple question, what is the right thing to do right now? Imagine you are stuck in traffic. You can rage against the situation, slam the steering wheel, and curse the cars around you. Or you can practice Stoic presence. You can breathe deeply, accept that the traffic is outside your control, and perhaps use the time to reflect on your day or listen to something inspiring. The traffic does not change, but your experience of it does. This practice is especially powerful in relationships. How often do we truly listen to others? Most of the time, we are distracted, thinking about what we will say next or silently judging the person speaking. But when we bring Stoic presence into our conversations, we create space for real connection. We hear not just the words but the emotions behind them. We respond with compassion instead of defensiveness. In doing so, we strengthen our bonds and create more harmony in our relationships. Presence also helps us handle uncertainty. When the future feels overwhelming, the Stoics remind us to narrow our focus. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it with the same reason you used to face the present." This simple wisdom shifts our perspective. Instead of trying to solve all of tomorrow's problems today, we bring our attention to what is in front of us. We trust that when the future arrives, we will meet it with the same courage and reason we are practicing now. This is not easy. Our culture encourages constant distraction. We are bombarded with notifications, news, and endless streams of information designed to pull us away from the present. But every moment we practice returning to now, we reclaim a bit of our power. We remember that our worth is not measured by our productivity or our ability to predict the future, but by the quality of our actions in this moment. In the next section, we will explore how Stoicism teaches us to practice virtue as the foundation of a meaningful life. Because no matter how chaotic the world becomes, living in alignment with our deepest values is what ultimately brings lasting peace and purpose. If presence is the practice of anchoring ourselves in the moment, then virtue is the compass that guides our actions while we are there. For the Stoics, virtue is not simply a lofty ideal or a nice-to-have quality. It is the very essence of a good life. They believe that external circumstances, wealth, fame, even health are ultimately beyond our control. What we can control is our character and the choices we make. This is why virtue was placed above everything else. The four cardinal virtues of Stoicism: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance form the pillars of this moral framework. Wisdom allows us to see the world clearly, to distinguish what is within our power from what is not, and to make decisions rooted in reason rather than impulse. Courage gives us the strength to face life's hardships without despair, to stand firm in our principles even when doing so is difficult. Justice reminds us that we are part of a larger human family, that our actions affect others, and that fairness, kindness, and integrity should shape our dealings with the world. Temperance teaches us balance, helping us avoid excess and live in harmony with ourselves and those around us. Imagine for a moment applying these virtues to your daily life. When a colleague insults you, instead of lashing out, you pause and consider a wise response. When fear creeps in about an uncertain future, you summon courage to take the next step anyway. When faced with a moral dilemma at work, you choose justice even if it costs you personally. And when temptation urges you to indulge in harmful habits, you practice temperance, choosing moderation and self-control. In this way, the virtues become more than philosophical concepts. They become living, breathing practices that transform how we navigate chaos. Marcus Aurelius embodied these ideals even as he ruled an empire plagued by war, disease, and political turmoil. In his private writings, he constantly reminded himself to act with justice, to remain humble despite his power, and to resist the temptations of anger and despair. He understood that while he could not stop the storms raging around him, he could maintain his integrity within them. Seneca, too, often reflected on the role of virtue in cultivating inner peace. He wrote that a good person is content not because life is easy but because their conscience is clear. This is the heart of Stoicism. Peace of mind comes not from controlling external events but from living in harmony with one's values. In our modern world, virtue might seem like an outdated concept. We are taught to chase success, comfort, and recognition. Yet these things, as the Stoics knew, are fleeting. When we anchor our lives to them, we are tossed around by every change in fortune. But when we anchor ourselves to virtue, we become steady. External chaos may continue, but inside, we remain grounded, knowing we are living with integrity. The practice of virtue also reshapes how we view adversity. A Stoic does not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but rather, "How can I respond to this with wisdom and courage?" Adversity becomes a chance to live out the virtues we claim to value. It becomes an opportunity to practice patience, resilience, and compassion. Consider a personal example. Perhaps you lose your job unexpectedly. This is a painful and frightening event. Yet through the lens of Stoicism, you ask yourself, what virtues can I practice here? Wisdom might guide you to see this as a chance for growth or redirection. Courage helps you face the uncertainty without giving in to despair. Justice reminds you to treat others with kindness even when you feel wronged. Temperance helps you resist falling into destructive coping mechanisms. In this way, virtue turns suffering into a proving ground for character. The Stoics also saw virtue as inseparable from community. We are not isolated beings, Marcus Aurelius wrote. We are like hands or feet, designed to work together. Justice, in particular, calls us to act for the common good, to extend compassion to others, and to recognize that our individual well-being is bound up with the well-being of those around us. In times of chaos, this becomes especially important. When the world feels divided and hostile, practicing justice means being a force for unity, fairness, and kindness. But perhaps the most radical aspect of Stoic virtue is this: it is entirely within our control. Unlike wealth or status, which can be taken from us at any moment, our character is ours to shape. No one can force us to act unjustly. No one can take away our ability to respond with wisdom, courage, and self-control. Even in the worst of circumstances, we retain this freedom. This is why the Stoics believe that virtue alone is sufficient for happiness. If your sense of worth is tied to possessions, reputation, or external success, you will always live in fear of losing them. But if your worth is tied to your character, you are unshakable. Chaos may swirl around you, but within, you remain free. As we continue our exploration, we will see how this focus on virtue naturally leads to resilience, the ability not just to endure chaos but to grow stronger through it. In the next section, we will dive deeper into how Stoic practices can help us transform suffering into strength, turning life's challenges into opportunities for growth and self-mastery. If virtue gives us a compass to navigate life, resilience gives us the strength to keep walking the path, no matter how rough it becomes. For the Stoics, resilience was not simply about surviving hard times. It was about transforming suffering into a training ground for growth. They believed that adversity, while unpleasant, is an essential part of human existence. It is not something to be feared or avoided at all costs, but rather something to be embraced as an opportunity for building character. Epictetus, who himself was born into slavery and endured immense hardships, often said that we should not wish for things to happen as we want them to, but rather wish for them to happen as they do. This radical acceptance does not mean passivity or giving up. Instead, it means working with reality rather than against it. When we resist what is, we create unnecessary suffering. But when we accept life as it unfolds, we free ourselves from the emotional storm of wishing it were different. Imagine going through a difficult breakup. The natural response is pain, anger, perhaps even despair. But a Stoic would say this pain is not the end. It is a call to growth. It challenges you to practice emotional discipline, to learn from what happened, and to become stronger through the process. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that pain is neither unbearable nor eternal. It is just an impression, a momentary discomfort that will pass, leaving behind an opportunity for wisdom. This is the core of resilience. It is not about denying pain or pretending everything is fine. It is about sitting with the pain, understanding it, and using it as fuel for transformation. The Stoics saw every difficulty as a kind of forge, a fire that tempers the soul, making it more capable of withstanding future trials. One powerful practice for building resilience is premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This involves imagining possible misfortunes in advance, not to dwell in fear, but to prepare the mind. For example, you might think about losing your job, facing criticism, or even the death of a loved one. By contemplating these possibilities, you train yourself to see that while such events would be painful, they are survivable. You strip them of their power to surprise or overwhelm you. In our modern lives, we are often taught to avoid discomfort at all costs. We seek constant pleasure and escape from anything that challenges us. But the Stoics would argue that this avoidance makes us weaker. Real strength is built through exposure to discomfort, through facing difficulties with courage and composure. Just like muscles grow through resistance, the soul grows through challenges. Consider how this perspective might change your relationship with stress. Instead of seeing stress as an enemy, you could view it as a test, a chance to practice patience, courage, or temperance. Instead of dreading failure, you could see it as feedback, a lesson that helps you improve. This shift in perspective transforms how you experience life's hardships. They no longer crush you. They shape you. Resilience also comes from focusing on what is within your control. When chaos strikes, it is easy to become consumed by what you cannot change. But Epictetus taught that our true freedom lies in focusing on what is ours to command, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes. If you lose a job, you may not be able to control the economy or the decisions of your employer. But you can control how you respond, whether you fall into despair or take action to seek new opportunities. This inner focus creates a sense of stability even when everything outside feels unstable. It reminds us that while we cannot control the waves of life, we can learn to steer our ship. We can choose our response, and in doing so, we reclaim our power. Stoicism also teaches us to zoom out, to see life from a broader perspective. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of the vastness of the universe and the fleeting nature of human concerns. When we see our problems in the context of eternity, they lose some of their weight. That argument you had with a friend, that missed opportunity at work, in the grand scheme of things, these are small ripples in the ocean of time. This perspective does not dismiss your pain but helps you carry it with a lighter heart. Resilience is also nurtured by gratitude. The Stoics practice gratitude even in hardship. They looked for what could still be appreciated, the breath in their lungs, the lessons learned from suffering, the opportunity to practice virtue in adversity. Gratitude shifts the focus from what has been lost to what remains, from despair to hope. In today's world, where uncertainty seems to be the only constant, resilience is more valuable than ever. We cannot predict what challenges will come next, economic downturns, global crises, personal losses, but we can cultivate the inner strength to face them. This is what Stoicism offers, not a life free of pain, but a mind fortified enough to endure it. In the next part, we will explore how the Stoics cultivated emotional discipline, learning to master their feelings without suppressing them, and how this practice can help us stay calm and clear-minded even when the world feels like it is falling apart. If resilience gives us the strength to withstand life's storms, emotional discipline teaches us how to steer the ship without being tossed around by every wave of feeling. For the Stoics, mastering the emotions did not mean suppressing or denying them. It meant understanding them, observing them, and responding in a way that aligns with reason and virtue rather than impulse. This approach is more relevant than ever in our modern world, where emotional triggers seem to lurk around every corner. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the importance of guarding the mind. He saw the mind as a citadel, a fortress that we must protect against harmful influences. He reminded himself daily that other people's words or actions could not harm him unless he allowed them to penetrate his inner defenses. This mindset turns emotional discipline into a daily practice, one where you consciously choose which impressions to accept and which to reject. Think about how easy it is to get caught up in anger. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and suddenly your heart rate spikes, your breathing quickens, and you are yelling at a stranger who cannot even hear you. But what has really happened? A car moved in front of you. The rest, the anger, the story you tell yourself about disrespect or injustice, is all within your mind. The Stoics would say that it is not the external event that upsets us but the judgment we attach to it. By changing that judgment, we change our emotional response. Epictetus taught that when we are disturbed, it is never because of the thing itself but because of our opinion about it. This simple but profound teaching shifts the entire conversation about emotions. Instead of trying to control the uncontrollable world, we focus on controlling our interpretations. This is where emotional discipline begins. A practical way to cultivate this discipline is through mindfulness, becoming aware of the gap between stimulus and response. When an emotion rises, pause. Instead of reacting immediately, observe it. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What story am I telling myself? Is it true? This pause creates space for reason to step in, for you to choose your response rather than be enslaved by your impulses. For example, imagine receiving harsh criticism at work. The immediate emotional response might be defensiveness or anger. But if you take a moment to breathe and reflect, you might realize that the criticism, even if poorly delivered, contains useful feedback. Or you might conclude that it says more about the critic than about you. Either way, by pausing, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer a puppet pulled by the strings of emotion. The Stoics also practiced negative visualization to strengthen emotional discipline. By imagining potential losses, of health, possessions, or even loved ones, they trained themselves to value what they had without clinging to it. This made them less vulnerable to emotional devastation when inevitable changes occurred. This practice does not make you cold or detached, it makes you prepared. It allows you to love deeply without being destroyed by loss because you understand that everything is transient. Another powerful tool is journaling, which Marcus Aurelius himself used in his meditations. By writing down his thoughts, fears, and frustrations, He created a safe space to process his emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Today, journaling remains one of the simplest yet most effective practices for gaining perspective and emotional clarity. Emotional discipline also means cultivating compassion, both for others and for yourself. When someone wrongs you, the Stoics encourage you to consider their perspective. Perhaps they acted out of ignorance, pain, or fear. This does not excuse bad behavior, but it transforms your emotional reaction. Instead of boiling with resentment, you can respond with understanding or at least with calm detachment. Self-compassion is equally important. Many of us are harsher on ourselves than on anyone else. We berate ourselves for mistakes, dwell on our failures, and carry guilt like a heavy stone. But the Stoics remind us that self-condemnation serves no purpose. The goal is not to punish ourselves for falling short, but to learn, adjust, and keep moving forward. As Seneca wrote, "To err is human, but to persist in error is diabolical." Recognizing a mistake is the first step toward growth. In today's digital world, emotional discipline is tested constantly. Social media, with its endless stream of outrage, comparison, and instant gratification, is like a battlefield for the mind. Every notification pulls at our emotions, every comment threatens to disturb our peace. A Stoic approach here would be to set boundaries, to use these tools consciously rather than be used by them. Ask yourself, does engaging in this argument or scrolling through this feed serve my growth, my peace, or my purpose? If not, walk away. Ultimately, emotional discipline is about freedom. It frees us from being at the mercy of every external event, every fleeting feeling. It allows us to live intentionally, guided by values rather than reactions. The world may remain chaotic, but within that chaos, you can create a still center, a place where your reason rules, not your impulses. In the next part, we will explore how Stoicism helps us find meaning and purpose even in the midst of chaos, and how this search for deeper significance can give us the strength to endure life's greatest challenges. If emotional discipline helps us navigate the turbulent waters of life, the search for meaning and purpose gives us a destination toward which to sail. For the Stoics, life was not simply about surviving chaos, but about living well in the midst of it. Living well meant aligning our actions with virtue, with the rational and moral principles that define our highest nature as human beings. This pursuit of purpose is not just a philosophical ideal, it is a practical compass for anyone who feels lost in the noise and confusion of modern life. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that everything he did, every choice he made, should serve the greater good. He saw himself as a part of a larger whole, a citizen of the universe, bound to contribute to the well-being of others. This perspective transforms how we approach even the smallest tasks. When you see yourself as part of something bigger, your actions gain new significance. Even the most mundane responsibilities become opportunities to practice virtue, to be just, patient, courageous, and wise. In a chaotic world, it is easy to feel powerless. The news bombards us with stories of disaster, conflict, and suffering. Social pressures push us toward goals that may not align with our true values. But the Stoics teach us that we always retain power over one thing, our character. No matter what storms rage around us, we can choose to live with integrity. We can choose to embody the virtues that define a good life. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, understood this deeply. He had little control over his circumstances, yet he found freedom in mastering his thoughts and actions. He taught that our highest purpose is to live in accordance with nature, which for humans means living in harmony with reason and community. This purpose does not require wealth, fame, or perfect conditions. It requires only a commitment to living by our principles, regardless of what life throws at us. Seneca adds another layer to this understanding by encouraging us to reflect on the shortness of life. He wrote that it is not that life is too short, but that we waste much of it on trivialities. When we recognize how precious and fleeting our time is, we begin to prioritize what truly matters. We focus less on chasing external validation and more on cultivating inner excellence. This shift in priorities brings both clarity and peace. One of the most profound Stoic practices for finding meaning is the daily reflection on death, memento mori. At first, this may seem morbid, but its purpose is not to dwell on fear. It is to remind us that life is finite and that every day is an opportunity to live fully and authentically. When you embrace this truth, you stop procrastinating on the things that matter. You speak the words that need to be said. You take action on the dreams you've delayed. You cherish the people you love instead of taking them for granted. Purpose also gives us resilience. When we have a clear sense of why we are living, we can endure almost anyhow. This is not just Stoic wisdom, it has been echoed by thinkers throughout history. When you live for something greater than yourself, whether it is a cause, a community, or simply the pursuit of virtue, life's challenges lose some of their sting. They become tests of character rather than meaningless suffering. In our age of constant distraction, many people struggle to find this sense of purpose. They chase endless entertainment, wealth, or status, hoping these things will fill the void. But the Stoics remind us that true fulfillment comes from within, from aligning our lives with values that stand the test of time. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? What principles will I refuse to compromise, no matter the circumstances? These questions cut through the chaos and help you find your path. Living with purpose also transforms how we view chaos itself. Instead of seeing it only as a threat, we begin to see it as a teacher. Every setback becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Every loss becomes a chance to deepen gratitude for what remains. Every injustice becomes a call to practice courage. In this way, chaos is no longer an enemy but a forge, one that shapes us into the people we are meant to become. As we conclude this journey through the teachings of Stoicism, let us remember that its wisdom is not meant to stay on the page. It is meant to be lived. We are called to practice resilience when life feels overwhelming, to exercise emotional discipline when our feelings threaten to control us, to seek meaning in our actions, no matter how small. This is how we build an unshakable inner fortress, a place of calm and purpose that no chaos can destroy.